According to surveys conducted among financial experts, most of them believe that we're headed toward a recession and that it will occur sooner than we expect, with some estimates pointing towards 2025. While these predictions may seem alarming, it's crucial to remember that economic downturns are a natural part of any business cycle, and they're not always indicative of a looming disaster. In this context, it's essential to identify the driving forces behind these predictions and analyze whether they hold up under scrutiny. With that being said, let's unpack the reasons why experts fear an economic downturn in the U.S. by 2025, starting with high levels of consumer debt. In recent years, Americans have taken on a substantial amount of debt, which has led to concerns about its potential impact on the economy. According to the New York Fed, total household debt reached a new record of $17.3 trillion at the end of the second quarter of 2023, surpassing the previous peak of $16.9 trillion set in the first quarter of 2009, right before the Great Recession. The surge was driven primarily by mortgage debt, which rose to $13.4 trillion due to higher home prices and interest rates. Auto loans also increased to $1.6 trillion and student loan debt to $1.7 trillion. Credit card balances added another $1.2 trillion to the total, reaching pre-pandemic levels. High levels of consumer debt can be an indicator of economic vulnerability because when consumers carry high levels of debt, they have less disposable income, which can lead to reduced spending and economic activity. Moreover, if interest rates continue to rise, debt payments become more expensive, which can further strain household budgets and potentially lead to defaults. If a significant number of consumers default on their debts, it could trigger a wave of bankruptcies and job losses, leading to a recession. However, it's worth noting that not all debt is created equal. For example, mortgage debt is typically considered to be of lower risk than credit card debt, because it is secured by the value of the property. Additionally, high levels of debt can be the result of economic growth and prosperity, rather than a sign of impending doom. Nevertheless, it is essential to monitor consumer debt levels, as they can be an early warning sign of economic trouble. Another reason why experts fear an economic downturn is the ongoing war in Ukraine. The conflict has had far-reaching consequences, including disruptions to global supply chains, increased energy prices, and heightened geopolitical tensions. These factors have contributed to inflation and slowed economic growth worldwide. Additionally, the war has raised concerns about food security as it has disrupted the supply of key agricultural products such as wheat and fertilizers, leading to shortages and price increases in many countries. This situation can be particularly worrying for developing countries that rely heavily on imports to feed their populations. As the war drags on, the economic impact is likely to intensify, posing challenges for businesses and policymakers. The longer the conflict continues without a resolution, the greater the likelihood of a recession. However, it's important to note that the impact of the war on the economy is highly uncertain and depends on various factors such as the duration of the conflict, the intensity of sanctions, and the ability of countries to mitigate the effects. Nonetheless, the war in Ukraine remains a significant risk factor for global economic stability and deserves close monitoring. A third concern revolves around declining manufacturing activity. Manufacturing is a crucial component of any economy, and when it weakens, it can signal broader economic trouble. Several factors can contribute to a decline in manufacturing activity, including reduced consumer demand, increased input costs, and tighter monetary policy. When these factors come into play, manufacturers may scale back production, which can lead to job losses and a ripple effect throughout the economy. Furthermore, a slowdown in manufacturing can indicate a loss of competitiveness in the global market, as other countries may be producing goods more efficiently or at a lower cost. This can result in a decline in exports and a decrease in economic output. Additionally, A weak manufacturing sector can exacerbate income inequality, as workers in manufacturing jobs tend to be concentrated in lower income brackets. A contraction in this sector can disproportionately affect lower income households, widening the gap between the rich and the poor. This can create social and political instability, making it even more challenging for policymakers to address the root causes of the economic downturn. Therefore, it is essential to monitor manufacturing activity as an indicator of overall economic health and to take steps to support the sector when necessary to prevent a deeper recession. Next is the risk posed by tight monetary policy. Central banks play a critical role in maintaining economic stability by controlling the supply of money and setting interest rates. However, when central banks raise interest rates too quickly or too high, it can have unintended consequences, such as slowing economic growth, reducing investment, and increasing unemployment. This can occur when central banks attempt to curb inflation by increasing interest rates. If inflation is not brought under control, it can erode the purchasing power of consumers, leading to decreased economic activity and potentially a recession. Moreover, rising interest rates can make it more expensive for businesses to borrow money, which can limit investment and innovation, resulting in slower economic growth. In extreme cases, tight monetary policy can contribute to a financial crisis, such as the 2008 housing bubble burst. By increasing interest rates, central banks can reduce inflation, but they must carefully balance the risks to avoid causing a recession or other financial problems. It is essential for central banks to monitor economic indicators closely and adjust interest rates accordingly to maintain stability and prevent a downturn. Finally, there's the specter of aging populations. Many developed countries are experiencing a significant increase in the number of people over the age of 65. This trend has several implications for the economy, including a shrinking workforce, increased healthcare costs, and a shift in consumer spending patterns. As the population ages, fewer people are available to work, which can lead to labor shortages and slower economic growth. Additionally, older individuals tend to have higher healthcare costs, which can strain government budgets and reduce resources for other priorities. Moreover, as retirees spend their savings and pensions, it can lead to a decrease in consumer spending, which can negatively impact businesses and the overall economy. An aging population can also lead to a loss of human capital as experienced workers retire and are replaced by younger, less experienced individuals. This can result in a decline in productivity and innovation, making it more difficult for the economy to grow. To mitigate the challenges posed by an aging population, governments can implement policies to encourage people to work longer, invest in automation and technology to improve productivity, and provide incentives for private sector to create more jobs. By taking these steps, countries can ensure that their economies remain strong and resilient in the face of demographic changes. In conclusion, while it's true that many experts are concerned about a potential economic downturn in the next 2 years, it's essential to approach these predictions with a balanced perspective. While factors such as high levels of consumer debt, the war in Ukraine, declining manufacturing activity, and tight monetary policy do present challenges and risks, it's important to consider the broader economic context and the measures being taken by policymakers to mitigate these risks. Additionally, an aging population is a long-term issue that requires proactive planning and policymaking to address. Rather than succumbing to fear or panic, it's crucial to stay informed, make sound financial decisions, and engage in thoughtful discussions about the future of the economy. By doing so, we can navigate any challenges that may arise and work towards building a more resilient and sustainable economy for the future. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe for more insightful content on economics and current events.